My social justice topic is, how can students who have been affected by fetal alcohol exposure be given access to a fair and supportive education in this classroom? I chose this topic as during one of my pracs I came across a child who I will call James, who had a history of prenatal exposure, and this affected his learning and behaviour. Fetal alcohol exposure comes under the umbrella term fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. This exposure occurs when a woman consumes alcohol during a pregnancy, which can change the brain structurally as well as functionally, causing a range of lifelong and irreversible disorders. The most visible and severe form of this disorder is fetal alcohol syndrome, and we can identify this by characteristics including distinct facial features as shown in the image, brain dysfunction, growth retardation, and birth defects. James, however, has alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorder, and this also appears on the spectrum. He was exposed to alcohol continuously throughout his development, and this has resulted in mental impairment and learning difficulties. As teachers, we need to be mindful that there's a high prevalence of drinking amongst pregnant women in Australia, and this suggests that fetal alcohol disorders will become more prevalent. The disorders do not directly appear within the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders version 5, and therefore schools do not receive funding to support these children. This becomes a social justice issue as schools have a mutual obligation to provide a fair and supportive education to all students. However, without funding, schools struggle to provide the support that we need to ensure that they are given a fair and supportive education. In regards to the standard, in particular standard 4, I felt I was really not helping James to manage his behaviour. I tried quite a lot of strategies that worked with others, but it really didn't help, and at times it seemed to escalate his frustration. This is not consistent with providing a safe environment for James or the other students. In regards to Standard 1, I needed to find a way to attract and maintain his attention so that he would want to participate and not disturb the other students. This was quite hard as he didn't talk very much, so finding out his interests was difficult. I also found it hard to find specific resources that were really targeted to help him. I believe that these concerns impacted on my ability to fulfil Goal 1 of the Melbourne Declaration of Educational Goals for Young Australians, and this included making sure that I catered to the needs of James. Research undertaken in Australia in 2010 showed that 1 in 5 pregnant women still continue to drink during the first 3 months of pregnancy. The two most important elements that contribute to fetal alcohol exposure is the timing and intensity of the alcohol exposure. The syndrome has been associated with frequent heavy alcohol abuse through pregnancy. However, even moderate amount of alcohol or binge drinking has resulted in harm to the fetus. O'Leary reports that moderate alcohol consumption during the first 3 months of pregnancy can disturb the development of features such as eyes, ears, heart, and limbs. And in the later months, it's shown to affect language, behaviour, and cognitive disorders. Research also shows that not every fetus exposed to alcohol, however, will be harmed or harmed to the same degree. Factors such as low socioeconomic status, age, duration of drinking, genetic predisposition, maternal health, or smoking all play a part in increasing the risk. There is a lack of accurate data about the prevalence of these disorders. The reason for this include a lack of routine screening for alcohol consumption, no standardised or regular data collections, or a lack of trained professionals that diagnose fetal alcohol exposure. In addition, alcohol may not be the only drug used during pregnancy, making it even harder. In regards to James, his parents were told that he had a fetal alcohol disorder. However, he was diagnosed as having ADHD. This is not unusual, as hyperactivity displayed in individuals like James is similar to those found in those who have ADHD. This is quite a big issue for schools because if a misdiagnosis occurs, it will make it harder for schools to develop support strategies suited to the students' needs. To complicate matters further, a diagnosis or even a recognition of a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is often met with strong disapproval by society towards the parents, which makes it extremely hard to work with parents. So children with ARND exhibit central nervous system damage, which includes brain damage. This image shows a normal child's brain at 6 weeks compared to that of a child's brain who's been exposed to alcohol when the development was occurring. These children have difficulty with memory, learning, and information processing. They're very slow to learn new skills, and there's no real regular pattern to retrieving information. It's very hard to teach when they have trouble remembering what they were taught yesterday, and also very hard because they don't learn from their mistakes. In regards to planning, they have difficulty organising daily tasks, sequencing, and carrying out multi-step tasks. The concept of time is extremely difficult. As in with behaviour, they've got poor management of the behaviour, very impulsive, disengaged, and their activity levels fluctuate between very high and very low. For these students, the social skills, they have difficulty understanding cues and processing information in social contexts. They also have a lack of empathy for others, and McGee and Riley believe that this makes these children candidates for depression, truancy or bullying. With their speech and language, they have a lack of clarity in speech and very poor language comprehension, which are areas that we need for understanding, expressing within the classroom and in social situations. So how did this impact on my teaching and learning? All verbal directions or routines were continually repeated during the day, and often James would start something or forget what he was doing. He really needed to be watched continually or physically taken through each steps repeatedly, and this took away from valuable teaching time. Transferring his thoughts or information into writing was difficult due to speech problems or relaying information, and any attempts at writing really took a considerable amount of time. James had trouble finding the right words or had limited vocabulary, making communication strained or frustrating for him, and this often resulted in outbursts. James would often lose track of time, as time is a very difficult concept, and again missing out on learning time. Socially, these children are very immature for their age. They have difficulty with empathy, unaware of their emotions, or often act out or say inappropriate things during conversation, and this makes it very hard for them to make friends. His behaviour in class made it hard to organise groups or peer mentors to help him. His verbal outbursts and inappropriate noises disturbed the other students and impacted on my teaching. Often these children are thought of as different, and this makes them a target for bullying, and this was also a concern. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration in America believe the key to helping these students is to recognise the extent of the problem and understanding the challenges to learning and functioning that these kids are facing. They offer 6 steps to help students in the classroom. Structuring a caring and consistent environment, these students need consistency and structure, as they don't adapt as easily and are less able to create their own routines as other children. Shifting attitudes and improving understanding, so this is recognising that a child is trying hard but is still struggling, and this will go a long way to help with their learning. Learning to translate misbehaviour, perform a functional assessment so you can understand the reason behind their behaviour. Changing your classroom teaching style, so trying new strategies and finding the ones that work best with these children. Changes to a classroom environment can make the whole environment calmer and less distracting, and this will help all the students. And the final one is engaging the whole school community, so getting information out there about these disorders and discussing it with your peers and specialists. Research by Paley and Connor also place emphasis on the teaching strategies used. In addition, though, these researchers have added to the strategy support for the teachers. This is an important addition, as teaching these students full-time can be frustrating and challenging. Teachers have many students to contend with, so they may not always be able to give these students the time and support they require. They also suggest that a strong relationship with parents or families should be established, as they believe that parents may also need to advocate for their child to receive additional support, such as a teacher aide. The general consensus from other literature is that simple strategies such as being consistent, using routines and structure, breaking tasks into small steps works best for these students. They all suggest repetition is a key strategy, and not to forget that the children can learn, it's just finding out what strategies suit each individual best. So the key features of the literature were: work out and modify your selection of teaching strategies. Choose what works for you and your student. Be consistent, use and teach routines. These individuals need repetition. Modify your teaching environment to suit the children. Learn to translate the reasons behind your behaviours in the planned approach, so perform a functional assessment. Work as a team. Use your peers, specialists, the families and community. And don't be afraid to ask for help. It's very challenging and can be very taxing on you and the student. My plan begins with providing a caring and consistent environment. I believe that this encompasses shifting attitudes, which links back to the research of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services. Here I need to be thinking of this child can't rather than this child won't, or thinking strengths, not problems. I really need to be looking at trying different strategies. This will begin with routines and repetition, It could involve things like video modelling of skills, clear and visible rules, or role playing to help with learning. Schedules will help with organisation, timing and sequencing. In regards to fair and consistent consequences, this would include reminding students regularly of the rules and consequences and not singling out a student in front of others, as peer acceptance is very important. Paley and O'Connor mention individual consequences for these students. So these consequences will be explicit. So if you do this, then this will happen. And it also have one consequence for each rule, but have a different one for another rule, and being very consistent. The plan would also include modifying classroom environments, so reducing the visual and auditory distractions. And linking back to the research, we can have functional assessment done on the child to work out what is triggering the behaviour, so you can help to stop or lessen any outbursts of frustration in the classroom. And the final one is discuss differences, respect and tolerance with the whole class, and this will benefit all students. Assisting with the self-regulation of behaviour and emotions. So this aligns with my concern for James and Standard 4 of the professional standards. This involves teaching coping strategies such as relaxation techniques, counting, getting a drink or going to a quiet corner, helping students to recognise the most common triggers that cause them to be frustrated. So this could include developing scripts to use before the behaviour escalates, such as, I know this is hard for me, but I'll keep trying. Breaking tasks into smaller, more manageable steps to avoid frustration, and using visual reminders of behaviour levels. So this could include providing a chart such as a thermometer to direct students' attention to where their behaviour level is at or where it should be. Being alert to the time of day and how this affects the student, so making sure your more difficult activities are performed when they are most alert. Increasing their curiosity to capture their attention, so using images, video, humour. And this links back to my other concern in getting James to engage with activities and helping him to manage his behaviour. And also keeping myself calm. It's important that I also keep myself under control so I can model behaviours and not let myself get upset in front of the other children. The third part of my plan would be improving interpersonal skills. So this one could involve role playing of social situations, working with specialist teachers to use video modelling or appropriate play context using social stories and explicit repeated teaching of emotions. Carefully selecting a buddy to act in a role model, and this came from Paley O'Connor, who suggests that this will assist in expanding their communication skills and socialising. Model, teach and practicing self-talk to encourage students to stop and think about their actions, and teaching other students a little bit about the disorder so they can develop an understanding and empathy of why they act as they do. The fourth part of my plan involves working as a team, so involving the whole school, letting others know about this disorder so that they are aware of how they can help in the playground, developing a support plan and giving each staff member a copy, doing your own research and let others know what you have found. Talk to your specialist teachers and involve the parents by keeping them up to date. Let them know what you are trying, what has worked, what hasn't, and learn from what they have used successfully. Invite them into the classroom to see what you are doing. Finally is support the student's teacher. Offer assistance, resources, training, encouragement, or just someone to talk to. If you are that teacher, take time to look after yourself. You need to be alert, energetic, and mentally prepared to look after the student. So how do I make this plan work? I'm starting with resources. I think resources are relatively cost-free, other than time. A lot of information can be found on websites, research articles. There's a lot of helpful information with strategies and things out on the internet now. Key personnel would be all staff who are involved here, so all the way down from admin, and including teacher aides. Teacher aides' time would be quite significant. Specialist teachers, paediatricians, GPs, and especially the families would be involved. The time frame, with James, I was expecting you to see improvements within one term. Upkeep is mainly time needed for consistency, repetition, especially teacher-aided specialist times, ongoing meetings and discussions. To evaluate success, I would envisage that you would monitor the peer relationships and participation in activities. You'd have less behaviour incidents from playground, a decrease in outbursts in the classroom, a higher engagement in classroom activities. You may see less days absence. Any noticeable academic improvements? changes in behaviour at home, and overall happiness and well-being in the classroom. For the strengths, I can see quite a lot of these in this plan. The strategies are going to benefit students with ASD or ADHD, and a lot of students will get a lot out of all the different strategies, such as visuals. Learning the reasons behind the behaviour will help everyone understand the triggers and how they can prepare for them. Helping to teach self-regulation will lessen outbursts, frustrations and anxiety in the classroom, and also stress, which will not only help the teacher but all the students. Improved interpersonal skills will improve peer relationships and enable group activities to flow a lot more smoothly. Also, coping strategies will assist many other students, including those who just suffer from anxiety. For weaknesses, James could be classed as different, and this makes him a candidate for depression, anxiety, bullying, and maybe even truancy. And this is backed up by Paley and O'Connor and O'Leary. There's limited research in Australia to draw on, so a lot of research will have to come from overseas. Due to the inconsistency in retaining or relaying information, strategies may help on one day, but the next day they may not work as efficiently. On that note, it's also possible to account for any outside influences on their behaviour, so something might happen at home. Opportunities. Many opportunities present themselves with students growing in self-esteem and confidence. For my colleagues, developing new understandings, and these can be transferred to other students, other schools or other contexts. For the school, being a low socioeconomic area, there's an increased chance that they may have other students with this disorder. Therefore, they are more informed, and this plan can be used for other students. For myself, I'll have more confidence in teaching these students, a larger database of strategies, more calmer and more empathetic. For the threats, I can see staff members who don't believe the research or just believe that the child is being naughty. Other families and students who treat the child as being different is also a threat to the plan, and mainly a lack of funding, and this will affect staff allocation. There's also the threat that families may not want help with their child. Doing this action research project has been a rewarding process that has enabled me to bring together research, planning, reflection, and assist me to solve the problem of how to help a student like James with fetal alcohol exposure. It has given me the knowledge and confidence to modify my teaching, and it's allowed me to examine literature from different sources, which I believe is an important element as it keeps me up to date with research and it dispels any misconceptions or assumptions I've had. It's also allowed me to compare views, and from this I've developed an informed judgment about the topic. I believe without this process I would have had difficulty putting together a plan to assist the students. And in regards to the plan, I believe the use of the SWOT was the strength of this cycle. It gave me a chance to look at the plan in depth, and it forced me to be honest with myself. And this aligns with the views of Egan and Kalchak. What did I learn about myself? I've learned that my confidence has grown as my knowledge has increased. As a result, I believe I'm more able to understand and support a student who's been affected by this disorder. It's also taught me to look beyond the behaviour and delve deeper to find out what the cause is. In regards to the issue, I'm a lot more aware of the symptoms of these disorders and its prevalence in schools. I'm also aware of the need to make the whole school and community aware of what happens to children when women drink during pregnancy. I've learnt that individuals with this disorder will all present with different symptoms and difficulties, so not all strategies will work for each student. This process also builds professional networks, so networks all working towards a common goal that will be shared with the whole community. It also shows how important it is for schools and teachers to develop a positive relationship with families of these children so that the strategies can be used consistently at school and at home. As a beginning teacher, I believe reflective practice is a powerful tool that allows me to review and analyse my practices and assumptions, and these will shape my future actions. Like Gimbal, I believe it allows me to be critical about how I can improve my teaching and help me to understand the importance of quality pedagogies and its effect on children's learning. My approach will include regular reflective practice because as a teacher, I believe that I need to engage in lifelong learning.